let's go back to young Guillermo, little Guillermo.
Mm-hmm. We have to go back a lot.
Well, okay, we'll go back a little bit, while, 6 or 7.
Yeah.
What did Pinocchio mean to you then?
Well, the first time I saw the Disney movie, I thought, this is how scary it is to be a kid. Like for the first time, I thought, oh, this is not a happy, sunny cartoon on TV. This is somebody that understands how you can view the darkness from a child's point of view. And I think that's the thing. Disney doesn't get enough credit for being dark.
Yeah.
He tapped into that. The company is the company. The author, the artist was very dark. That's how it felt. But it stuck on my throat that I didn't like the idea of changing to become a good boy. Because I was already getting that from the church and the Sunday service and my grandma, and everybody was pressuring you to shape you.
Yeah.
And I think my idea is that all these forces crack you when you're a kid. And then you spend the rest of your life figuring out how to mend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mend, just like a wooden boy.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like for young Guillermo, like, was life a little hard? Was it tough for you?
It was weird because I was very permeable.
Yeah.
I think that for any other kid, the life would have been fascinating. My older brother grew up happy-go-lucky fella. It's what you're made of. If you imagine that you're a crystal glass, and certain notes of a soprano affect one quality of glass, but not others.
Yeah.
It's not about how hard your life is objectively, it's about how hard it is subjectively as a kid. And I was made of a certain glass that resonated with monsters and resonated with religion in different ways.
Amazing. Who was it that introduced you to Pinocchio? Was it your
My mom.
Your mom?
My mom. My mom and I went to the movies when I was a kid. I would go with her to the movies. And I think Pinocchio was a concession. It was the third movie, I think, or second movie I saw with her very, very early. The first movie we saw was Wuthering Heights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty intense. And I remember being scared, and I fell asleep on her lap, and during a storm. And then the second or third was Pinocchio. She said, well, I'll take the kid to something that the kid can understand. And I think from then on, we went to horror movies, we went to melodramas, we went together to see a Douglas Sirk movie or whatever was playing,
Did she appreciate your connection with monsters and that you really, something about the weird darkness in the world resonated with you?
Yeah, my mom was weird.
Oh.
That was my salvation. My mom was weird, my dad was super by the numbers. My dad was probably had no imagination. Yeah. But my mom had all the imagination.
I wanted to ask about your father because I haven't read a lot about him, and yet again and again you seem to revisit these father-son stories, and this one so much about the loss of a son and then a new child.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was your relationship with your father like?
My dad was a mystery. It's still a mystery to some degree. But the way I said, I lost my mom right before opening Pinocchio in the London Film Festival, like hours before, and the way I phrase it is true. Is all of my life I thought the question was my father, and when I lost my mom, I realized it was her. So it's something. For me, they are not encompassable. Like they are going to be the two shapes that affect my life and my narrative and what I do. And if I'm lucky, as I go away, I'll figure that it was not that important and I never figured it out. But my father is me and my mother is me. So this is the answer for me. And like right now, I just, the idea is, they were people, but to me they were symbols. We all exist at a symbolic level for others.
What did she see of your Pinocchio before she passed?
Very little. You know, she gave me Pinocchios, little wooden Pinocchios, almost every couple of years, and she wanted me to do the movie. And all of my life, since I was doing Super 8 movies, I was saying I want to do Pinocchio in clay, and she would identify with. We bonded over Pinocchio, and she said, "This is the one. You know, this is the one you're gonna deliver." And she passed before that, and the last Pinocchio she gave me was a fridge magnet, but we treasure it. But I don't know. My mom was a poet, a painter, a witch, a little bit of a tarot reader. She taught me how to read the tarot. She taught me how to read the I Ching.
See, I'm pulling those out now. I can see all those fingerprints on your movies. Like,
Yes,
that
of
makes perfect sense. And certainly, like, her love of Pinocchio, like that, it's in this film. I mean, you can tell. But you chose to tell a different story. This is set in Italy in the run-up to the Second World War. And this is not the first time that you've explored themes of fascism and authoritarianism, but why put Pinocchio in this dark, brooding circumstance?
Look, I think all my movies are melancholic, all of them. And in a strange way, death is the mother of Pinocchio, not even life. Life is youthful and exuberant and sort of irresponsible. She just goes, I'm going to give you life. But death nurtures Pinocchio. And I wanted the space of the life of Pinocchio to be between wars, because I think he's born out of a little bit of madness and death. Geppetto is completely drunk when he carves Pinocchio. I think his fatherhood is an act of desperation, and I think it was important for me to have Pinocchio born at the height of turmoil, when him being disobedient is socially unacceptable, when him being disobedient goes against him getting the love of his father easily. And I think it's very intimate for me, because I've been disobedient most of my life. I was disobedient about the Catholic education I received, although you can see it in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, all over the place. Collodi wanted to be a priest, and he was born out of two people that worked for a royal family, for a noble family. So all the impulses Collodi had, I identify with. The lessons are very different. I'm in favor of disobedience. He's in favor of obedience. He says he should change. I say he should not change. Yeah. It's Geppetto who should change. But the war and the turmoil are caused by a father figure that is Mussolini, and fascism is a daddy concern. But when I did Devil's Backbone, one of the rules I wanted to enforce, I said, I want war to exist in the periphery. I don't want it to exist in the main story, because we're exploring fatherhood. Right. And war is going to be one of 5 strands of narrative. If it overtakes the movie, so the decision I made early on was to send Pinocchio to Pleasure Island, which is a re-education camp, where the kids play at war.
But you realize, Guillermo, there are people who are going to just click this on Netflix, and they're going to expect something very different.
Yeah.
And I think
sorry.
You are but you are challenging, I think, expectations.
Yeah.
And certainly, even we think Pinocchio, we think, okay, this is a children's film. Do you think we don't challenge kids enough, that they need more high stakes and darkness and all of that stew that
I can only answer for myself.
Yeah.
I think that the most thrilling thing for a kid and a parent is dialogue. That's the most thrilling thing you can give to each other. Far more than an outing or going to a park. And there are certain movies that are confectioned for kids that is what I call babysitter movies, which are movies that you plunk the kid in front of the TV, and for 2 hours you have no interaction and you expect no questions to come out of that. But this is not a movie made for kids.
You're going to have a conversation after this
one. After this movie, when the reason it took 15 years to make is for 10 or 11 years, they would say, is it for kids? And I would say, not made for them, but they can watch it if their parents talk to them, right? And that's a very different, you're gonna have a conversation about life, death, about parenthood. It actually allows the kid to ask questions of the parent. Why was Geppetto like this or this and that? But it was not made for kids. It was made to stand next to Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth as a trilogy or 3 movies that talk to each other.
I wonder as a filmmaker what you feel the strings that you're kind of being pulled by. Because I read about 15 years to make this film, only finally meeting Ted at Netflix and getting the okay to like realize your vision. We seem to be in this world where there's so much nostalgia and so much like branded franchises. You have a very unique vision. So what's it like trying to protect that and still work today?
Look, I think that all of my life have been very clear to me that for film to exist, there needs to be a tension between finance and art. It's actually necessary for film. I think that when you are completely free, you're a prisoner of that. Because you cannot play racquetball without a wall. You need something to bounce against.
You don't want a blank check. You need challenges, you need limits.
Actually, the freedom of this movie came because we stayed on this movie. I wanted it to be spectacular, but I wanted it to cost half of what a big stop motion movie costs. So it was done for a very reasonable price because we had unreasonable expectations of freedom. When I started this movie, I talked to the crew with Mark and my producers, and we said, no one will send notes that we need to address. We will not preview this movie in a family environment. We will not get feedback from families. We're making a work that we all think is art and beauty, and it won't be touched. And we were able to deliver because the budget was constrained.
Do you think people appreciate the artistry that goes into stop motion animation? They sometimes dismiss it as just child's play.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's like asking if you are in front of a work of love and a work of art, is your relationship and your dialogue with it. Some people can stand in front of a Picasso and just say, I can paint like that. You can't. I am sorry to inform you, you can't. Or they can stand in front of a very, very academic painting and say, that's beautiful. It's each person's dialogue with the work of art. I can tell you this, the amount of work that this movie requires is almost impossible to imagine if you don't actually do the craft. An animator yields between 1 and 3 seconds a week. The sequence where Pinocchio talks to death, it took about 2 years to animate. One single animator in a little dark room with Pinocchio and death for 2 years.
I've had the pleasure of talking with you before, and you talked about kind of making peace with monsters as a child and finding beauty in what's alien. I appreciate your love of monsters, but it feels like today in our world, there's more monsters than ever before.
Oh, yeah.
That there's more intolerance. There's more, unfortunately, racism, anti-Semitism, and more.
Rage.
And rage. What can monsters teach us? Like, do you think there's the beasts that you've embraced, can that help in terms of, I don't know, show us some kind of light in this world we find ourselves in?
Well, humanity is sort of in the middle of a massive cosmic tantrum, right? It's a tantrum. It's like that moment where the baby stops even emitting sounds and the tongue is just bouncing in silence. It's there's such a rage, and then compulsively, in a tantrum, you avoid dialogue. I think the only thing we can say that can save us is a dialogue with the darker parts of ourselves. And if we look at each other just in black and white, and we say, whatever position I'm in the right, is destruction. So the monsters and fantasy and all that allows you to graduate towards the dark, and say, look, can we identify with the monster, the other, the weird, the angry. This movie has imperfect fathers and imperfect sons, the cricket says. We made it a point to make Geppetto irascible.
Yeah.
Sort of not very smart.
Carves Pinocchio when he's drunk.
He's a very flawed character.
Yeah.
There's a moment where he refutes Pinocchio really quite cold-heartedly. And we made Pinocchio a handful. And we made him really weird on the beginning. So it's not easy to accept, because otherwise it would be just an easy fable. So I think what we need is imagination is empathy, because it allows you to empty yourself into something that is not that easily accessible.
I wore my Frankenstein T-shirt in honor of one of your favorite favorite monsters. Pinocchio is on this journey to try and find himself and be true to himself.
Same as Frankenstein. Yeah.
And same as Guillermo.
The creature of Frankenstein.
Yes. I wonder how your journey is going in terms of making peace with your darkness and being true to yourself.
You know, look, it's going okay. I think that I can tell you that I deal with things that I wouldn't have been able to deal with when I was younger. And it's all. I mean, the benefits of life come in very small increments. You yield very little per decade, you know. But as long as you yield, and I think the word is not accidental, yield. Whatever is flexible, whatever bends with the wind is alive. Whatever breaks with the wind is dead. Right. So the more you calcify into your beliefs, the more brittle and closer to something terrible you are.
I'm being greedy with your time. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Again and again, themes of death come up in your films, and certainly in this one. Are you still kind of working through your feelings on death and the kind of the finality?
I know exactly.
Because it's almost like a love story with you.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is. Well, it is. I mean, the reason the mother is death on Pinocchio, to me, is because I have a very Mexican vision of death, which means that it is. I guarantee one thing right now to everybody in this room: we will all die.
Thanks, Guillermo.
Yeah. No, but it actually gives you a finality that makes you realize the second thing. I'll guarantee: we're all alive. We are all alive in this room. And that's absolutely remarkable, you know. And I think in Mexico we appreciate that metronome. Cosmic metronome is birth, death, birth, death, birth. It doesn't stop. Doesn't stop on you. You don't say, "Oh, he's born. The world is now going to stop." It keeps going. Birth, death, and there is a certain soothing, cosmically soothing notion in saying, while I'm here, I'm going to do the best I can.
All right. That is beautiful. Well, you created a wonderful spark of life with your boy there. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure, man. Always.
Excellent.